Everyone. I am Kristen here, welcoming you to another edition of Conversations with the Writer. As always, I have my fabulous co-host, Miss Tammy Blackwell, with me today. And, we apologize. It's been a minute since we've filmed a video. I think our last one was the rom-com movies back in May, but I've been busy. Tammy's been busy and out of the country. And now we're back together. And today we are going to talk about fat positivity in romance novels. As I'm sure most of you are aware, the country in general is full of a lot of overweight people. I believe, probably 30 to 40% or something like that at this point. It's a higher number. But if you were just to know about the world via romance novels, you would think that number was maybe 2. Because finding novels that have overweight women in general, much less overweight women as the protagonists, or overweight men even as the protagonists, is few and far between. It's kind of hard to find those books. So today, Tammy and I are going to talk about the tropes where you see overweight people in books. We're going to talk about maybe why there aren't many of them and why we need more of them. And I'm going to start with you, Tammy, and let you kick off this topic. This was your suggestion. Last time we met, you wanted to do this. Why do you think representation is so low when romance is generally not that bad at representation?
I honestly think that fatness is something, it's like the last taboo about, that we talk about, like we've kind of overcome talking about a lot of other things in our country, that has oppression attached to it. And fatness, I feel like, is maybe the last one, and I'm not sure why that is, but it really, people, for example, there may be some of you that cringe every time we say the word fat.
True.
But, the fat community is really trying to take that word back to where it's not an insult anymore. It is just a statement of who I am, as much as I'm white, I have green eyes, I'm fat. That's it. But, I think we as a country, like socially, we are not to where we are super accepting of fat people yet.
I'll agree
and
with
that
that
is very much reflected in romance novels. I think romance tends to be often on the forefront of acceptance and pushing, acceptance to others and acceptance of fatness is the last holdout here. We're making progress, especially in the last couple of years, but
yeah, it's getting better. But I mean, there's entire series on dinosaurs and aliens, and they can find love. But even the people in those books are not fat.
No, they all have firm bellies and perky boobs.
Oh, always perky.
And, the men's bellies are like washboards, and, that's just how it rolls in romance.
And I think some of that is, you've mentioned it before, and it's one of my favorite phrases, I think about it often, is aspirational. How romance is a little aspirational. And sometimes if you're reading romance novels for an escape, you're reading them to kind of get out of your daily life, then you do want to think that every man is 6'3" and has washboard abs and loves puppies and is sensitive. And these are the things you're maybe looking for in a romance novel. And some people may be perfectly fine with not seeing themselves as they are represented in those pages. But I think, like you said, it's kind of time that we get beyond that, and we start writing people that are a little more real.
Yes, I think that is definitely true. I remember, so I have met Jason Momoa.
Ooh, I'm so jealous of that, by the way.
The first time I saw him, the thing I said to my friend was, oh my God, I didn't think anybody actually looked like a romance hero. I didn't think that was real. Jason Momoa. Guys, I cannot express to you how much more attractive he actually is in person. And it's because you're overwhelmed by the fact that he is like 6'5" or whatever he is. And he is like nothing but muscle and those eyes with that hair and that's, I mean, but that is the only person I have ever seen in my entire life that I have ever thought, that's what a romance hero, he's a romance hero.
Yeah.
Everybody else, I'm like, no, you might be cute, but you're not romance hero cute.
Right. There is a level there.
Yes, definitely. And so Jason Momoa is in the 0.00001%. That makes the cut. So, I mean, you know, it's not just that females are always represented as perfectly formed, but the males too, and I do think that that is also a problem. You know,
yes.
You know, men experience anorexia just like women, all sorts of things.
Body dysmorphia.
Yes, and so I do think that it is a two-sided problem, but I think specifically anytime you talk about physical image, it is more of a feminine problem because a lot of our value in our society is placed on how we look.
You are absolutely correct about that. Now, it's not that there aren't fat people in romances. No. Unfortunately, I shouldn't say unfortunately, but usually, that's the word I was looking for, they're the funny friend. And they always have, for some reason, it's always a woman who is described as looking like a model. She's always tall, always thin, but just has crippling self-confidence issues. And her best friend is fat and funny, and she doesn't understand why her best friend doesn't realize how wonderful she is, even though she knows society is telling her exactly why she's not wonderful.
Yes. You know, there's a movie that comes to my mind instantly with that. It was called The Truth About Cats and Dogs. Probably
I love The Truth About Cats and Dogs. I really did. So, Janine Garofalo, right?
Yes, I am
that movie.
A huge Janine Garofalo fan. One thing that did annoy me, though, in the 90s is Janine Garofalo was always the fat, funny friend. Janine Garofalo was not fat.
No, not by a long shot.
I mean, probably a size 8.
Yeah.
But standing next to Uma Thurman, she did look a little more rounded. But in that is very much describes the trope of that movie. Like, Uma Thurman, not very smart, feels very, nervous about the fact that she's not very smart. Janine Garofalo is not just smart, she's like the wittiest person you've ever met, but, she's not attractive. Janine Garofalo is adorable. But
yeah.
That's how that movie, played out.
Correct.
And that you see that over and over and over again in other movies and romance novels and just in, pop culture in general.
And and that trope also bothers me because, quite frankly, fat people aren't always funny and they aren't always nice people. We're people, just like everyone else. The thing is, remember the movie, probably one of the worst movies ever made, Shallow Hal?
I never watched Shallow Hal because I hated the premise.
It was a terrible premise. And I watched it, and I don't remember why. I feel like I got tricked into it somehow. But anyway, he goes out, and he sees people's inner beauty. That's all he can see is people's inner beauty. So, of course, he meets this woman who is physically overweight, but he sees her as model thin and blonde and gorgeous because he's seeing her inner beauty. Meanwhile, everyone who is conventionally attractive in the movie, he sees as crones because conventionally attractive people cannot be nice. And they aren't friendly, and
never smart. God
never
bless
smart. They have horror they have evil in their souls. Meanwhile, fat people are just walking queens of the earth.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I am, But
But not everybody is as awesome as we are.
exactly.
So we need to point out how special we are.
Exactly.
That we are not a trope, but we are in fact special.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, and any time that you start generalizing, you saying, anytime you say all fat people are funny, all thin people are dumb, that is a bias.
Yes.
That you need to start working on. And
Exactly.
Again, I think it's one of the last talked about ones. Disability and fatness, I think, are the two that are the most overlooked when we start talking about bias. But there is definitely, that we're all supposed to be funny and smart and whatever.
And I think it's because they feel like because we don't have physical attractiveness, we have to have something. So we have to be smart because heaven forbid we're not pretty.
Yeah. Exactly.
What have you found? What have you read that you would consider a fat positive character, a fat positive romance? Something. Well, actually, before we get into that, we'll get into that in a minute. The other trope, it just popped in my head, I've forgotten about, is when they have a fat protagonist, they're always curvy.
Yes.
They're always curvy. They have big breasts, and I'm sorry, not all overweight people have big breasts. It's not necessarily a thing. They always have big breasts, a nipped in waist. I don't know how that's possible when they're overweight, and but they're and a large behind, and those are the only characteristics that are described.
Yes.
Anywhere in the book.
Yes.
Is the size of their butt, the size of their breasts, and that they have a pretty face, and they're curvy.
Yes. And again, I think you see that reflected like in plus size models.
Yes.
I have said many times before that I'm the wrong kind of fat for that outfit. Because what you see on the model, I'm like, that never works for me because where my fat is in my stomach, not in my bottom or, like that's just not how I'm made. And it seems like there is an acceptable type of fat, and it's that overblown hourglass.
Yes. Yes.
And then maybe not other types that are acceptable. So going from that, and it's ironic because curvy is in the title, but Sierra Simone, Misadventures of a Curvy Girl. Now let me tell you, if you have not read Sierra Simone, if you do not like your romances super spicy, then maybe this is not the one for you.
I'm taking notes though.
They are super spicy. But in it, she is very proud of her body. The model on the cover is not the acceptable type fat. She's a different, and they use an actual human model.
Ooh.
On the cover. And they show her in lingerie. And I think that's very progressive. And then
I agree.
Everything about the story about how she sees herself, there is a part of the story where other people don't, they make comments, but she is confident in who she is, and there is no hesitation on the two men that she's involved with.
What the hell?
About how attractive they find her. And I really feel like that was probably the most fat positive romance novel I have ever read in my life. And it's even more fat positive than anything I've written. I was really, I read that, and honestly, the spice level was a little above my comfort level, but I still really enjoyed the book because I just thought, wow, that's really cool.
Okay.
That's really cool how they've presented this.
A fat positive book, and we'll go into back to my original question a while ago. What have you read that where fat people were presented positively? A book I read recently that I've just been raving about to anyone who will listen is Denise Williams' The Fastest Way to Fall. And this is a fat woman who works at a magazine, and she wants to get fit, but only for health reasons. She's not trying to lose weight. She just wants to feel like she's healthier, feel like, her heart and lungs are working well and those kinds of things. So she joins an app, and her assignment is she's going to write about the app for her magazine. She's going to write how she does with the app. And she winds up getting paired with a coach who actually runs the company, that she doesn't realize that. And they start falling for each other. And the way it's written, that not only is she proud of how she looks, and she's confident in how she looks, he loves how she looks and makes no bones about telling her. And more importantly, she believes it. Because a lot of times, like I was just saying with the fat friend trope, you tell someone that they're attractive and they're like, oh, I can't be because of it, because of how society at large will look at me. No, I can't possibly be. And that feeds into a lot of how we view ourselves, I think.
Yeah.
It's just how the world in general might view us. But that was the thing I really, really loved. And at no point did the book cause her to lose weight. At no point, I think she lost some, but it was because she was also eating better and she was exercising more. But she said all along, this is not my goal, and everyone was fine with that. And you don't always see that in books.
No, you don't. And, it's not until we hear that kind of acceptance that we start to maybe experience that kind of acceptance. It's really hard if every book you read about a fat protagonist that they hate themselves because they're fat, that they are insecure about that. It's really hard to not also feel those things. Like, it's not until you start seeing other people being like, you know what? I'm hot as all get out. It does not matter my size, that you start being like, oh yeah. Yeah. So I do think it's really important that this shift is being made. And that one sounds wonderful because a lot of the ones, even that I have read, even though, there's a fat main character, they find love, yada, yada, eventually they learn acceptance. A lot of times at the beginning, they don't accept themselves how they are. Yeah. Another one I think that did good with that, the Talia Hibbert Brown sisters.
Yes, I love the Brown sisters. Yes, indeed.
I don't think any of the girls were ever described as thin.
No.
But the last one, she was very round in my, or the way I read it, she was. And she knew she was hot as all get out.
Yes, she did.
And
carried herself as such.
Yes, and I thought that was a really good representation. I really enjoyed I enjoyed that entire series for many reasons, but that I thought that was a really good representation.
And it didn't make a huge deal about it either, on either side.
No.
Not her size nor the man that fell for her. It wasn't something the book constantly had him thinking about either.
Yeah, it was just kind of a mention.
Yeah.
The book was not about her fatness.
No.
And
it's more about her personality and how their personalities didn't always jibe and how the opposite attracts kind of thing.
Yes, which is one of my favorite. And if I remember back in the 90s, and I don't remember who exactly said it, but it was I Am More Than My Coming Out story. Because a lot of YA right then was LGBTQ positive, but it was all
everyone
about
was coming out.
Being LGBTQ. It was not just this character happens to be. And I think we're kind of in that early stages with fat romance, that it's about being fat right now. A lot of times. It's not just, this is just another aspect. I have brown hair, I'm fat. Yeah. So, but again, I do think we're in very early stages of fat acceptance in romance novels.
And before we get into recommendations, I do want to mention one where there was the male character was overweight, because you don't get a lot of those either, as we were saying earlier. It's by Rebecca Lynn Solomon, The Weather Girl. I've mentioned this before. I don't think it was in this video. It may have been a different one, my other video series. But he's overweight. The male protagonist is overweight. And it kind of annoyed me just a little bit because it kept talking about his round belly. as if to remind you, hey, this guy's fat.
Yeah.
Repeatedly. But
Don't forget.
Yeah, please don't forget that this man's fat, but she likes him anyway. But other than that, how all of their other aspects of their romance was handled, I thought, really well, and didn't really lean into that. He had a little insecurity issues, which I think is normal, but that was quickly abated, and they moved on. There is another series I have not had a chance to dig into. I meant to, and I got behind, called Men, but the series is Men Built for Comfort. And it is a series of books of just larger men and how they find love, Yeah. And I think I need to dig into that a little. I probably will, when I put the video card with the Rex up at the end. But I would also like to see that trend expand as well, because not everyone's Jason Momoa.
No. He's the only Jason Momoa there is.
More's the pity. All right, Tammy, what recommendations do you have for us?
So for fat positive romances, the Talia Hibbert series.
Mm-hmm.
I am so bad at names. Again, that series, I know we've talked about it before, but it is really wonderful. Olivia Dade writes a bunch of fat positive romances. The only one I have read is spoiler alert, but I really enjoyed that one. I thought it was a great series. It is a fat woman who is part of an online fan community for a show that's kind of Game of Thrones-ish.
Oh, okay.
And so the main character on there also participates in the fan boards because he's a fan of the book series and everything. And they are best friends on the boards, but she doesn't know it's him. And then they end up going on a date for, I think, a contest or something, and figure out who each other is. And,
that sounds delightful.
It's pretty delightful. It's really enjoyable, especially if you're kind of nerdy like me. The Sierra Simone book, Misadventures of a Curvy Girl, again, beware of the spice level, but that was pretty good. 9 Rules to Break When Romancing a Rake by Sarah McLean. She is a plus size person. There's talks in the beginnings about, some of the older ladies telling her to eat less cake and all that. But it's a thin person on the cover, and that's something that annoys the pee out of me.
Yeah.
So those are the ones that I really think do a pretty good job, and I really enjoy reading. There is one I want to warn people against.
Absolutely, please. I have one of those as well.
There's one in the Kristen Ashley Rock Chick series, and I forget which book it is, but she used to be fat, but now she's thin, and so now she's desirable, but she was not before. It is only because she's lost a bunch of weight.
I can't remember which book that is.
It's later on in the series. It's not one of the first ones.
Okay.
But I remember it made me very angry. So
because the Rock Chick series in general, that was one, especially the first couple, they were curvy, but it was fine. And I was going to actually recommend those. I forgot about that one, though.
Yeah, but there is one where there is a lot of talk about how she used to be fat and not attractive, and now she is thin and attractive.
Okay. I want to give, along that trend, another book, do not read. Jude Devereaux, Wishes is the name of it, I do believe. I actually have written here, I Hate Wishes by Jude Devereaux. Because it's a woman dies and she's trying to get into heaven, and they tell her to get into heaven she has to fix this other family, okay, which is whatever. But she's shallow and she would rather party, and there's a party going on at the gates of heaven before you can get in. So she's in there trying to, I think she winds up going in a waiting place between hell and heaven. That's what it is. So she gets this family, and it is a man and his 2 daughters, one who is thin and pretty, one who is overweight. And she has to help the overweight one, the fat one, get acceptance. And not get acceptance, get her happy. So first she just zaps a man at her. and a man comes, falls for her, and of course she's working for her family. She doesn't want to, do anything with this. So then she's still miserable, and without looking, they just said, let's just make her thin, because they don't fix her. And so they make her thin, and she doesn't understand why she's thin. And of course, once she loses the weight, she's gorgeous, just acres of hair, and she's so gorgeous. And that still doesn't fix her life, because that's not why she was miserable. And eventually they do get to happy ever after, but it's one that I hated with every breath of my body. So don't read that. It's awful. Don't read that. What you can read, Jasmine Guillory, The Wedding Date, which I do love. And the protagonist, she's fat, but she's not, I don't know, baby fat. I mean, she's not really like, she's not obese or anything. I'm not saying this correctly. There's levels. She's at the lower level. But anyway, but she falls, falls in love, and it's the way she's written is great. She's confident. She has great friends. She has a great support system, and a lot of times you don't see that either. Julie Murphy, Pudding, which is a young adult, and it's also a movie I think was on Netflix, possibly. Or am I thinking about Dumpling? Dumpling. That's it. I wrote Pudding, but I'm thinking Dumpling. Also very good representation. Young adult, loved it. And she
lots of Dolly Parton.
Yes, I love the Dolly Parton parts. That made me happy. She's also written a book in a new Disney series, and I cannot think the name of it right now. I've read it. I can't think the name of it. But it also features an overweight character who winds up on a dating show. And of course the lead falls for her. And there's some squicky moments in it, but overall it's really good. I also have some spicy ones by Katie Roberts. Electric Idol. It's a retelling. The whole series is a retelling of Greek mythology. This is Psyche, Demeter's daughter, and how she fell for Eros. And it's very spicy. But, and again, she's confident in herself. She's gorgeous. She knows it, and he loves every single thing about her, from the tips of her head to the bottom of her feet. And I really liked how that's represented. Julia Quinn, Romancing Mr. Bridgerton. This is where Penelope, who, if you've watched the series, Penelope is put in terrible clothes by her mother, and is kind of the fat friend of Eloise, actually, even though she has this whole secret life. Where she's kind of the queen of the tongue without anyone knowing. This is where she gets her happy ever after. It is also going to be the subject of season 3 of the series, which will be on Netflix, I think, next year maybe.
But in the book, don't they say that she lost 2 stone?
She did, and
which is 34 pounds.
I don't like that as much.
Yeah.
But there's inklings that there was interest there before she lost the weight.
Gotcha.
And again, it's fine if she. I feel like she lost it because she wanted to, not because she felt she had to. And to me, that's a bit of a difference.
Yeah.
Yeah, she didn't think she had to attract attention, but she wanted to, I think.
Well, and I think some of it was just that she'd gotten older. And,
yes.
Some people as they, because you come out in society, at 16?
Yeah, that's awfully young.
Yeah, so, like...
She was an old maid at, 21 or something?
Yeah, and, by the time her story rolls around, she's a old 21, and so I mean, some of that's just natural, going from being a child to an adult.
Yes. Rebecca Witherspoon. I've not read any of hers, but a lot of hers are very positive, and she's a hoot to follow on Twitter.
Yes, that's exactly what I was just thinking. I love her on Twitter.
I've also been suggested, and I have not dug into this, the Honeymooners by Christina Lauren. I haven't read a lot of Christina Lauren.
I have, and I've read the Honeymooners, and I can't remember.
That someone who had just read that suggested that to me when I asked for fat positive romances. I have not read that one, but I'm gonna toss that out there. One I'm reading right now is by Thea DeSalle, and she only has the 3 books, which is really disappointing. But it's The King of Bourbon Street, and it's 2 insanely rich families. The daughter from one meets the son of another in New Orleans, and so far I really like it, although I feel like her fatness is being fetishized a little bit, and I don't think I like that. And he's kind of described her as like the poofy cupcake a couple times, and I'm kind of like, but I do like her because she seems to have it to be perfectly comfortable in her skin and how she is. So I'm hoping that some of that language clears up a bit. So give that a half recommendation.
I'm going to start
until
referring
I
to
can
people
read
as
forward.
cupcakes.
Yeah. Until I can read a little bit further in the book, but
He's a cupcake with not quite enough icing.
yeah. Cupcakes have to have a lot of icing. That's good. I like that. Yeah, but that usually when we have suggestions, we can go on and on and on. And I've reached the end of mine. Because they're just, we have a long, as you said earlier, we have a long way to go.
A long way
to
to
get
go.
some of those out, to get some books like that out.
A statistic I shared with Kristen earlier is I have over 650 titles on my Kindle. Judge me however you feel you must. Less than 10 of them feature fat protagonists.
Yeah.
So I'm not good at math. I won't tell you what that percentage is, but it's really low. And so there's a long way to go on that. There really is.
Yes, I will agree with that. And I hope for just the sake of romance that they get their act in gear.
Yeah.
And get us some, so the next time we do one of these videos, we've got a ton of good recs to give you.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have anything, a final word or anything you want to say before we wrap up today?
Just that if you do have read some fat romances, put them down in
Absolutely.
comments. We would love to read those. I do have one, or actually I have more than one, but A Dance Like Flame is where I think I've maybe finally kind of hit my stride with my fat characters. I don't know. But many of the characters I write are overweight to some degree. And I will say that I have gotten a lot of praise from people. People thanking me for writing fat characters. People, saying that it helped change their view of themselves. But I've also got the other, where people have told me that they prefer their protagonist attractive. So,
Wow.
we as a society just have a long way to go.
We do. Also, in today's video, I have repeatedly gone back and forth between fat and overweight, and I'm not comfortable with saying fat yet all the time. I feel like overweight is softer to me for some reason.
Well, because fat has been used as an insult so many times.
That is true. Yes. So I've gone back and forth with that today, just because I have a lot of work to do. But I don't think I'll get there. I think I'll get there. And at the end, I forgot to do this at the top of the video. Any opinions that Tammy and I expressed today are our own and do not represent the libraries for which we work. And if you're clear, I'm clear. Thank you guys for watching. Have a good evening.
Bye.